Gironlands, Gironzano, Gironzalon.
Okay, so first of all, I would like to ask you, well, how are you and where are you and what you're doing at present in this terrible critical situation?
Yeah, well, I'm doing well. I'm staying isolated. I am currently in Zurich. I've been here on a fellowship sponsored by Literaturhaus Zurich, and I'm here trying to wait and see what happens. Hopefully, things will be easier to travel and go back to New York when the fellowship is finished. It should be finished in a couple of months. If I need to leave before, I will. But right now, it's too dangerous to travel, and New York is really not doing so well at the moment.
What's life like in Zurich at present?
It's very quiet, but Zurich is mostly quiet anyway. Everybody follows the rules, and it's usually very calm. But I've noticed that it's even more calm now. The streets are more empty. When I go to do my grocery shopping, all the stores, the shops, the cafes, everything is closed. People keep their distance on the sidewalk. But what I've noticed is that they make eye contact and they nod and say hello to you. So I think even with that kind of social distancing, people are trying to make a connection, trying to just show that they know you exist and we're all in this together. And I've noticed that in the last week or so, children are still outside playing. Their parents are still in the playgrounds watching them. Sometimes life like that has to continue, but I see people trying to take safety measures. It's calm here, but we'll see. We'll see what happens as this thing continues. We are in the second week of our lockdown. So we'll see what happens. We haven't had the singing the way that Italy has had, but we've had people clapping for medical staff, which
That's
has
good.
been nice to hear.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was good. And what do you have any news from New York, the city where you usually reside?
Yes, I have. My husband is there, and he had advised me very early on that New York would get really bad and to stay where I am until for as long as possible. He is doing okay. My friends are, I think, okay there. I've been trying to keep in contact with them as much as possible. Everybody is in lockdown. The city is in crisis, but people are staying inside, which is really good. I have had news from at least one person, two people who have caught the virus. One who was relatively young, 30s, 40s, and someone else who is in her late 60s. Um, Both of them are okay. That has been a relief. I think, we'll see what happens as time goes on, but it feels like we're in an apocalyptic novel or a very bad film. And it's strange to watch this and be a part of it at the same time.
True. Um, this is a major crisis, probably the, the greatest crisis that the global world has suffered from or will suffer from, because we are at the beginning of it. Do you think it will change the overall world, or do you think we'll go back to normal, business as usual and so on? How do you feel with regard to that?
Uh, you know, I think people are realizing how interconnected we are. I think people are realizing how important the workers that we've often ignored, how important they are. The truck drivers that make sure that food distribution happens, the people that are working in the grocery stores, those people that we have never paid attention to, we are realizing how important they are. I hope at the end of this, I guess my hope is that those workers are recognized, that our society starts to shift so that it's not from the top down, but we start recognizing the people that make up the large percentage of those who are, who make up the majority of workers around the world. My hope is that recognition also creates a change in policies, a change in pay structure, a change in the way that their work is compensated. I hope it happens. I have been thinking over the last several days that what we can be doing as we're sitting behind our computers and in our homes is beginning to think of what a quiet revolution would look like. Revolution that happens in isolation, ways to change our thinking even now. So when we step outside, we're ready to push for that. I think we have that. We have time. And I hope that different politicians, activists, writers, artists are thinking of ways that we can begin to make change once we get out. Because this is unbelievable. And the people who are taking the most risk are the people who are respected the least in our societies.
So you seem to be sort of optimistic that the crisis will, so to say, draw us all together rather than separating us. But aren't you afraid actually that this being socially distanced can be sort of internalized and that we may become more asocial than we are? I mean, in general, not only individually. In terms of societies that become more detached from other societies, countries deciding for themselves rather than together with others and so on.
I think that's the danger. And I think we're seeing in the United States an attempt by the administration to completely isolate the US. I think it's impossible. I think this, if anything, this pandemic has shown us how necessary our connections are. I go back to the ways that I've noticed people when I'm walking down the street to go grocery shopping, the way there's still that need for some kind of connection. There's a need for acknowledgement. I'm counting on that. Maybe I'm optimistic, but it's, thinking about teaching, Flavio, I teach in a university in New York City, and thinking about how I will conduct my classes in the fall, because there's a very good chance that we have to do this into the fall. Will that become a permanent thing? Is that a new wave of teaching? I don't see it happening, because there's something with human contact that encourages a deeper kind of learning than we can do on Zoom or any of those things. I hope it doesn't get to this isolationary standpoint. But as human beings, we're just not built that way. And I think if governments try to push for that, we're going to see other entities within the country start pushing forward their own agenda. And I'm thinking of Brazil, where gang members was it Rio, in the favelas, started taking control of their communities and saying, the government is not telling you to be safe, but we're going to tell you this. and everyone has to stay inside. We're going to see these groups of people take charge if the government is doing something else. We're realizing through social media and through isolation how little they know and how much power we can have if we form some kind of a community. So I do have hope, but I think you have to be hopeful to be a novelist or a writer. You have to have optimism. So maybe that's helping me right now.
Yeah, talking of the writer's optimism, as a writer, what's your idea of the say of the role of a writer, in general of literature in this particular instance, which it seems so dramatic, but actually is only one of the possible outcomes of this global world?
Yeah. You know, it's interesting thinking of, I think I read this statistic earlier this morning that Camus' book, The Plague, is now one of the highest selling books. And, you know, you're in Venice and I'm thinking of Thomas Mann, Death in Venice. Svetlana Alexievich with Chernobyl, you know, that book has been on my mind, of the way that that disaster struck and was unseen. Initially, people didn't see radiation. They didn't believe it. They were not quarantining. They were staying home, and then it hit. I'm thinking about these books, and I think literature can offer us a way to begin to think about what's happening now. And this is, people are gravitating towards those kinds of books. But I think we're also seeing the necessity of literature and art to transport us beyond this time into other places. I still need to think about things outside of this coronavirus. I still need to think about what it means to be a human being. I still need to think about all the questions that I ask in either the books and the essays I write or the things that I read. The art, people are realizing how nurturing they are, but also how necessary they are in helping us understand ourselves in this moment and what we could be like beyond. And it's been fantastic to see everyone reaching for art, reaching for books, reaching for music. And I hope at the end of this, governments, like the way Germany is doing, will begin to invest more heavily in the arts, because we are seeing what the necessity of it right now.
So to the people who say, well, invest your money on hospitals, which is more than sensible,
Yes.
especially I mean, considering what we are undergoing now, and say infrastructures and industries and so on, and also to keep, you know, to keep the population, to keep the countries going. So you think that a country should invest, and perhaps invest even more in arts and education? Would that be a way actually of going over this crisis and going also beyond to say a better society, if that
Absolutely.
is manageable, of course?
Absolutely. I mean, from the United States standpoint, the money that's being used to bail out corporations, the money that is not being taken, or not, billionaires are not being taxed enough. Amazon is not being taxed. You know, there are corporations that can give money to help funding with hospitals, those kinds of things. And at the same time, governments can, after this, continue to support the arts. It's possible to do both, but the rich, the very, very, very rich, will need to be taxed. Amazon needs to pay its taxes, you know, in whatever community that it is, that can fund some of the things we lack right now. I think a change is possible. I think we're seeing the necessity of it, and I do think arts is part of that. I really hope people are realizing how important it is. It's not just a diversion, it's nourishment and growth.
So coming to a more individual, say a more individual reception of the arts and literature, do you think that literature at present, in the present circumstances, should be more of a consolation, or still should keep people's eyes open, or should it do both?
I think it can do both. And I think it's also possible for even one book to contain all of those things in itself. People will reach for books based on where they are right now, what they feel like they need. And I think whatever that is, that's fine. I have friends of mine that are now reading romance novels, even though they would never have done that before. And whereas before they might have made fun of that or mocked those books, they need that diversion. And other people are reading things like The Plague or anything that speaks to this time. And it's a way to comfort yourself, is to know how other people have survived certain things. Literature brings us those things where human beings cannot do that right now because we are all separated. And completely, I think our minds are in 100 different places at once, and it's really hard to focus. And a book, a piece of art, music can help us.
If I may ask, what are you reading at present?
Oh, well, let me see. I have been reading a new book by a Ugandan writer, Jennifer Makumbi. Mm-hmm. She wrote Chintu, and she has a new book out that will be out, I think, in April or May in the United States. It's called A Girl is a Body of Water. And I've just given in to popular culture, and also one of my favorite writers. I'm reading the new Hilary Mantel. So I'm doing that. I'm reading a few books at the same time, and then I'm reading some nonfiction books. I'm looking at my shelf right here, and I'm reading some nonfiction books just as a way just to get my mind to expand. I'm reading books about photography right now. So different things.
If you were asked by somebody, suggest please a book to read, what would you suggest? If a friend of yours, if I asked you, what should I read right now? I mean, how should I, spend my hours and my days these days?
Oh my goodness. Okay, so if you asked me, Flavio, because I think both of us have read some similar books. I think I've talked to you about Dasha Drindij's book, Trieste. And recently I read, based on a recommendation she had given me years ago before she passed away, I started reading Thomas Bernhardt. Mm-hmm. So I not long ago I finished Wittgenstein's Nephew.
Okay.
Was just fantastic. I know he doesn't like people. I forgot the word for it now. Misanthrope.
He's a misanthrope, yeah.
He's a misanthrope.
He's a literary misanthrope.
He's a literary misanthrope. And I read that book a while ago, but it has stayed with me. And I think what stayed with me maybe is something that I'm finding in this situation, that he kept his distance and forced the distance between people through his personality, his anger. And yet what comes out at the end of the book is a very pure and sincere love for his best friend, in a way that I just found very overwhelming and touching. So maybe I would recommend that book to you, but I suspect you might have read it.
It would be a very good rereading. So I'll go back to Wittgenstein's Nephew. Would you also suggest this book to say the general public, or perhaps Makumba's book, or?
I would recommend Jennifer Makumbi's book, her first book especially, which is available right now, Kintu, and I think it's pronounced Chintu. It's magnificent. It's really incredible. And for someone who wants to get into an epic story that's really well written, it's really fantastic, and I would recommend that book.
Are you actually writing a new book right now, or you're working towards towards a new book?
I am thinking now. I'm in the process of exploring what I would like to do. I thought initially being here, I would get a chance to travel around to different archives. But I think because I'm just stuck here, I'm reading all of these books I shipped for research, which again has to do with the World War II era. So I'm reading all of this now, taking notes, trying to see what might stick in my mind as a potential story, something that will excite me. So I'm in the exploratory stage, but I have time. So I'm doing that and being patient.
If I may ask a last question, as you know, the coming week there should have been the 13th edition of the festival Incroci di Civiltà, in which you participated some years ago. If I'm not mistaken, it was 2011. Unfortunately, the Venetian audience, the Venetian public, is not able to participate, to see the Incroci Civiltà, at least at present. We're trying to reorganize it afterwards, when all this is over. Is there anything you want to say to the Venetian audience in the meantime, whilst they wait for the new edition of Incroci di Civiltà to be ready, and whilst they wait for you to come back anytime you like in the future?
Yeah, I would say Venice is one of my favorite cities, and that festival is truly one of my favorite festivals. All of you that run this are my friends, and you feel like family. So I wish everyone well. I can't wait to see everyone again. The city is magical, and it's a very, very special place. And anytime I'm there, I feel like this is the right place for me at that time. So I wish everyone good health, safety, happy reading, and I look forward to carrying on this conversation in person.
So, Maza, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you so much, Fabio. Thank you.
Maza, amici, Maza.
Vagano, vagano, vagano!